after the fall, man is placed in a new world that God created for him. God did not want him to perish. He was no longer able to stay in paradise because he was no longer the innocent child. But he should have a good place to live, a proper place. So God created in his wisdom the earth. And this was to be the world in which man was to work out his destiny and redeem himself. Here he was to have everything that was necessary, but he had to work. Here he had every opportunity to build a beautiful world, but he had to decide to do it. So the Lord, instead of sending him into perdition, gave him a planet to work on. Gave him a very beautiful planet, which was so lovely, so pleasant, so overshadowed by divine right, that it offended Satan to the marrow of his bones. Satan decided he had to get control of that planet. And to get that control, he got all his legions together, and he invaded the planet and took it over. And that which had been intended to be a very wonderful place was suddenly beset with all the sins, crimes, and delinquencies of the fallen angels. The angels that fell were rebels against deity. They become a symbol of rebels against truth. They become emblematic of the pressures of an anti-Christ power. They are selfishness, superstition, and fear. And through them, sin, guilt, and death came into the world. These were not part of the original plan, but they were necessary when that plan was broken, because they became the penalties of the errors that man was committing. Man has not been able to withstand the glamour of temptation. We find that in every profession, the search for profit has resulted in the corruption of ethics. Temptation seems to be something that makes it possible for you to do as you please. Man has become oblivious to the obvious consequences of his own conduct. We have had our Alexander, who died outside the walls of Babylon from dissipation. But dissipation goes on and nobody seems to have done anything about it. We have the conquests of Hitler, we have the conquests of Genghis Khan. Always tragedy, murder, and death. But conquest still goes on. We have all the private problems that were criticized and condemned 5,000 years ago, but we haven't gotten over them. The Code of Babylon said if a man builds a house and he doesn't build it properly and it collapses, the builder is responsible and must replace it. That any individual who makes a product representing it to be something, and it is not what it is represented to be, has committed a crime against society and a sin against God. And get out and clean it up. Well, they tried it 2,000, 3,000 years ago. We know definitely that many of the ancient Egyptians had codes. And that among other codes, well, there's one in Egypt in the Book of the Dead that is well worth remembering. In that particular work, gossip is listed among the major sins that can keep the individual out of heaven. You know, it would be an awful hard time around here if we ever enforced that one. Many people would be speechless. But the ancients had some good ideas, but we've done nothing with them. So everywhere we find not necessarily a slithery snake somewhere. We find rather a constant little pressure inside of ourselves saying to us all the time, you can get away with that if you want to. So we get away with all kinds of things and completely forget, when we look around us, that no one is getting away with anything. This is the thing we haven't realized. And I remember one day when I was down on Wall Street, one of my slumming expeditions, when I was starting out in life, a man walked out of the stock exchange on Wall Street and 50 feet away from me shot himself to death. This was not due to heaven. This was not due to a vengeance of God. It was due to the fact that the individual had so adversely conditioned his own temperament, his own disposition, that he could not survive the loss of a material gain. It was taken from him. He had nothing left to live for. In other words, no matter how hard he tried, how rich he became, death stood to take it away from him. Well, many people have been wiped out in the stock exchange, but no one has been destroyed because he possessed treasures in heaven. In 29, when they had the bad times, one man told me, he said, I lost all I had, but it was worth it because I had the first good night's sleep that I ever had. There was nothing more to go, so I could rest. So all these things add up to the mysterious forces which are personified in the biblical stories. These forces represent the unfoldment of man's own potential.